a lot of what he's talking about is illegality, general and criminality, but I don't see how it's relevant to this case, and I certainly don't see how it comes in through a hearsay exception to this case.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just listen and see.
How them boy had little spider fever and little shit like that.
Who?
I say, you know how Roland had little house. I mean, the apartment out, you know that fever.
Yeah.
We need some little shit like that around the way that we can roll out of, bro.
Yeah. Hey, I think
Your Honor, that's 2 minutes to 2:16. We're next going to play 6 minutes and 7 seconds to 8 minutes and 24 seconds.
He just acting like, well, I'll get him 23rd on the reason. I say, man, come on, man. D had it on, man.
I'm telling you, man. That nigga said, Cecil would let me see the video. That nigga said I ain't had over 17,000. Like, what nigga did? Come on, bro. Man.
And he keep trying to like he pumping you, he don't punch you up and all that. Go ahead on, man.
Yeah, man. Nigga,
yeah.
Brother man gave me $1,000. Listen, what? That nigga gave me $1,000 when I got out, bro. Look, he just want to be in so much competition with a nigga. Look, B Saline gave me like B Saline and Matt Main, they gave me like 500 apiece. And I think B Saline gave me like 800, and Matt Main gave me like 500. But he had that loss. He was just like shit. He was telling me like, boy, everything I win right here, pick it up. I had them pick up for 500. So I was telling him like shit. Matt Main, he like, man, that's all he gave you. He like shit.
Yeah.
He nigga with rappers and shit. Yeah, man. I thought that was Cecil right there. Like, yeah, man, I get my boy 1,000. That's how nigga give you 500. Man, what the hell you worrying about what another nigga gave me, bro?
Exactly, bro. Like you don't need, what the hell you ain't worrying about that? Ain't got nothing to do with you, bro.
That man gave me $1,000, bro. Number side it, like, nigga, I was going through to get the weed, and he was still putting, like, how everybody is saying, Matt Main telling folk goddamn, talking about, boy, hey, man, he lying. The man told him folk, like, man, boy, he took the boy out there. Shit, man, he tell me everything. He really took him out there. Like the plug situation, man. Man, home busting the head, 200-300. He like, shit, when D told me, like, shit, but you supposed to did it. Man, I ain't told you no shit like that.
He said that, G.
Huh?
He said, man, said that.
Yeah, that way everybody get from. Like, when I told Roger, like, man, Roger was turning at the gambling house, I ain't want to need that thing, like, man, I'm out here just taking everybody out. I'm right there just telling Roger, he like, man, hell no, I don't believe it, bro.
Yeah.
He like, yeah.
And Your Honor, the next portion is 8 minutes and 30 seconds to 9 minutes and 24 seconds.
Man, yeah, homo definitely tripping with that shell kill shit. Like,
yeah, then he like, what, I don't fuck them niggas, but hey, boy, then when he started getting saying like, oh yeah, boy, I got something for whoever get him. Boy, I got something for whoever get him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I just like, bro, you want all that fake ass shit, bro, go ahead on, bro.
I'm telling you, man.
Like, yeah, but nigga, what all that fake shit, bro? You know what it is? I was just like, bro, yeah, man. Go ahead on.
Somebody said they seen him in the car with the boy.
Huh?
I don't know how true it is. Somebody said they seen the boy killed in the car with him. I don't forget who the hell they told me.
In the car with him?
Yeah.
There's a fool there.
Yeah.
Somebody, man, they said he wrote the ball. Like, nah, they ain't gave me no deal.
That what they say?
Bill Boone said he heard, I think, one time, Bill Boone asked, like, Johnny brought killed through him. Somebody told him there was something.
Yeah. And I've been talking to Fred told me on the trail woman call.
And Your Honor, the spreadsheet, the state's not going to be playing 9:45 to 11 minutes.
Okay.
So I just focus on the first three. And for the 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 16 seconds, and he's talking with, I believe, Dewaskin Watt Wright, a 30 Deep member, and he says, you know that those guys have a spot in Pittsburgh, part of the city of Atlanta, and he says we need a spot like that we can roll out of. And so what the state believes, they're talking about getting a trap spot essentially to where they can go and quickly navigate and go in and out of. The next portion, which is
Okay, well,
Yes, Your
stop. And on that portion, is there any indication there that that's related to anything other than his own desire to be selling drugs?
So, Your Honor, there's another call, which I don't think we've gotten to yet, where Demekion Garlington is talking with, I believe, Mr. Wright. I'll check my notes. And he's telling him you should sell your Percocets on Instagram. That's how you can get customers. And he's mentioning, we will get to this call. And he says SB, talking about defendant Stillwell, was basically successful of getting Percocets sold online and Instagram. We also have embedded, there's no, in this specific case, I don't have, and oftentimes you do not have specific, Garlington and Mr. Wright got a trap spot after this conversation, and they put up a big sign that says, this is the YSL trap house. We're going to give our proceeds to our fellow gang members. But it's the fact that they, there's some uniformity because there's a spot called The Web that's referenced in 2015 and also comes up when we get to Antonio Sumlin's wiretap in 2022. And so areas where they can operate freely and sell narcotics, or Waters Road is similar in terms of going, a lot of times there's firearms there as well, is a common theme. So to answer the court's question, I do not have specific evidence of Mr. Wright and Mr. Garlington after this conversation, getting another trap house spot. There is on Garlington's wiretap a trap spot where he's actively saying, hey, there's a new customer, go outside and come back, selling primarily or almost exclusively Percocet pills off of Moreland. But to answer the court's question with this specific clip, I do not, the states wanted to get this part in talking about we need a spot we can roll from, just like these other group of people have in Pittsburgh.
And so what's overall the state's evidence that this is being done as to the benefit of YSL?
So, Your Honor, the state's position in regards to that is Garlington discussing and trying to find or speak about other areas to where they could sell narcotics is in furtherance of the gang. I don't have a specific piece of evidence to point to the court. And it's the state's belief that, inferences can be drawn by the jury in terms of if the state's alleging or putting forth evidence or arguing closing about The Web or about Waters Road. This is a wiretap call that is very unlikely they would believe they would be ever heard, more or less introduced in a trial, talking about freely, we need to get a spot we can roll out of. So it gives some relevance to the state's assertion that these are trap houses versus just places that people hang out who are friends.
All right. Okay, you want to move on to whatever you were going to say about the next clip?
Yes, Your Honor. The next portion, which is 6 minutes to 8:24, Garlington is discussing B. Slime. Jaboris Greer is who we believe that he's referring to, and he also references Christian McMiller, who the state has addressed to the court. And so he's mentioning money that they gave him for his bond, talking about different amounts and so that has come up periodically from the state in argument or about paying for fellow, and both B. Slime and Christian McMiller, the state believes were YSL members. And so that portion is for paying of bonds of fellow gang members. And so the state, because in terms of why that specific conversation is in furtherance, he's discussing how much each gave. And so it's some cohesiveness in terms of Mr. Wright and Garlington speaking about the bond money he received.
Okay. And the last one, Your Honor,
Garlington starts, it's right around 8 minutes and 28 seconds, where he says, Holmes is definitely tripping with the Shell Kell stuff. And so Shell Kell is someone who's does come up periodically in this case in terms of a rival gang member. And so him discussing Mr. Wright in response to that says he doesn't mess with him. And they're discussing someone else in terms of talking tough, I believe, about what they would do to Shell Kell. But nonetheless, it's the fact that Shell Kell gets referenced quite frequently by the state. This is a private conversation, and Shell Kell specifically will come up in other wiretap calls because Demekion Garlington makes reference in later wiretap calls to a song he made where he says, I have to change and take his name out of it because if something happens to that boy, they're going to think it's us.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the three portions the state wanted to play, Your Honor.
Okay. And those were generally just relevance objections, or
To me, the way I'm analyzing this is the state needs to satisfy two separate tests based on my objections.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be relevant, and then it needs to have a way that it's admissible through the rules of evidence beyond relevance. And I'm just not hearing it. I don't, Your Honor asked what evidence they have, and then Mr. Atkins said, well, we don't have evidence of them being Garlington and I guess DeWaskin Wright is who they think this is, getting a trap spot and putting a neon sign that says for YSL. And I agree they don't have that, but they don't have a lot less either. That's kind of a straw man of what we're expecting. There's no indication at all that I've seen that Mr. Garlington is, now there's certainly an indication that he's selling drugs, but that his drug dealing exploits have anything to do with Mr. Stillwell. Other than he talks about selling people pills on the same phone that he happens to use to talk to Mr. Stillwell and other people, but that's not really a nexus. So again, so to me, all of what Garlington has going on, unless there's some link, is completely irrelevant, and it's also subject to 403. But on top of that, when we talk about, Mr. Atkins just brought up, and I'm having a little difficulty following the call, and what Mr. Garlington's saying, but about bond money. Okay, if Mr. Garlington's on a phone call talking about so-and-so paid so-and-so else's bond, the state needs to figure out, who's going to testify and provide live testimony to this with personal knowledge, because just talking about what other people have done in the past is not, to my understanding of the law, is not going to fall under a co-conspirator statement. So we have both those issues, and I just don't think that the explanation that the state gave really addressed either of them for this call.
okay. So is all of the discussion about the money, what is that? Is that everything in the past?
Yes, Your Honor. Garlington is is discussing how much money they gave him for, I believe, his own bond in a prior case.
Okay. So it's his own firsthand knowledge about his own, what he got?
Correct, because he says B. Slime McMahon, and B. Slime gave me 800 and McMahon gave me 500.
Okay. And how is them discussing that?
So,
Furthering the conspiracy?
yes, Your Honor. So the narrative of past events can be in furtherance if it serves some present purpose. So the state's position is him discussing two other, who the state believes are YSL gang members paying for his bond,
Right.
fosters some cohesiveness. He's talking with Mr. Wright, who is to the state's understanding, an allied gang of 30 deep, which Garlington, Mr. Copeland, and defendant Stillwell, the state sets forth, used to be a part of, and then it kind of became part of YSL. All that aside, that's the state's argument, is that him discussing this, of the money they gave him, fosters a present purpose of cohesiveness.
Cohesiveness with the allied gang?
Yes, Your Honor. Because the speaker, Garlington, he has to be a part of the same conspiracy as who it's held against. So the state's position is that YSL member Garlington is making that statement. That's the state's.
Okay. I don't think that one meets the
Yes, Your Honor.
conspirator exception. And then okay. Was there any further argument on the Shell-Kel portion?
From the state, Your Honor? Or?
The defense? Anything beyond relevance on that?
I guess it would be the same objection about. I mean, the state articulated what their interest in this call is the fact that Shell-Kel, in the argument they just made, Shell-Kel's name just keeps getting brought up. Well, okay. I mean, even if that's true, his name keeps getting brought up, and even if to them that has some sort of relevance to the overall story they're trying to tell, we don't have a declarant at this point that is testifying. And I don't, there's no exception. I'm not trying to be smart, but to my understanding, there's no exception to the hearsay rule that, the state just gets to say, well, we think it's interesting that someone's name gets brought up a lot, so we want to admit it. I don't see how it falls under 801D2E or anything else. It's just he's talking about past events, as I understand it. I have no idea if he's talking about past events he has personal knowledge of. My guess would be he probably doesn't, but that's speculation. So I just don't see how any of this is admissible. I guess I'm just keep going back to the fallback position. I'm arguing to exclude things, but the fallback position is we're not talking about live testimony here. We're talking about the state playing a tape wiretap. And to me, that requires them to jump through extra hoops, including how it falls under a hearsay exception, and they're just not doing it.
And so how is this part of this conversation in furtherance of the conspiracy?
So, Your Honor, the notes I have is Garlington. He says Holmes, talking about someone else who's not Mr. Wright, not Mr. Garlington, is definitely tripping with the Shell-Kel stuff. And then Mr. Wright says, I don't mess with them, plural. But he's like, oh, yeah, I got some for him, whoever gets him. And he says, the guy is tripping. And he says, and then Garlington says, they got him, talking about the same male, in a car. They just seen the boy with him. Talking about this male he's tripping with the Shell Kell stuff because they think he's in a car with him. So it's the fact that they are concerned or discussing someone associating with Shell Kell that the state feels is relevant. I think there also is an argument here in terms of, because the state is not going to be articulating who this person is, there's a non-hearsay argument in terms of it's the fact that they're concerned someone's riding around with Shell Kell. And in terms of the truth of the matter asserted of is Holmes riding around with Shell Kell or not is not why the state's introducing it. It wants to show the jury how they're freely discussing someone who is possibly riding around with someone that they consider a rival gang member. That's the which in my mind falls under both, but almost is more applicable as non-hearsay because the state's not going to be arguing or asserting if this person actually is with Shell Kell or not. It's just the way they're talking about that.
Okay, but all right. So they're letting each other know then, though, that so here's this person, Holmes or whatever, that you need to be on the alert. He's hanging with Shell Kell. Is this basically the?
That's how I interpret from listening to what they're saying, Your Honor.
All right. I think that would pass the 801, whatever it is, D2E test. Okay.
Your Honor, the next three go together. So PDF page number 3200, 3202, and 3206, which are reference numbers 3171, 3172, and 3177. They're all on April 9th. The first one is at 7:33 p.m. The second one is at 7:35 p.m. And the third one is 7:41 p.m. So they're in a span of 8 minutes. And the reason I wanted to give this backstory is because they all kind of play off one another. And so I'm going to, I don't know what the defense's position on these calls, but I wanted to play them back to back to back. They're quite short, and then address the court.
All right. Well, is there going to be objection? Yes.
The same thing. It's relevance, and they appear. I think a fair reading of it is it appears to be Demekion Garlington involved in general criminality.
So, Your Honor, the state is going to play. The state's going to play PDF page 3200 first.
Okay.
Hello.
What's up?
I ain't got the, you got a slider?
Who is there?
They call you.
Oh, they quit, man. I'm tripping. No, that's what we looking for one now.
Damn.
Where the hell you at?
Right here with the op.
You with the who?
Man, I'm with him, buddy. You know I ain't gonna talk on no phone.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, the West End.
At the West End?
Yeah.
Damn, man. Hey.
And he ain't got no car. Your girl just pulled out in the car.
For real?
Yeah, that whole peanut just pulled out.
Damn. Who out there with him?
Nobody up there by himself.
He got something on him?
No, I don't know. I just came up here gambling. But he just got the little juror on him.
All right. Let me call you right back.
All right.
Your Honor, we're now going to play 3202.
Yeah, bro.
For
You
sure.
be.
All right, I just came to the house. I was on the block.
Boy, I'm right here riding through right here. They got a car. Boy, Johnny got down around the way, so he got something on him.
For real?
Yeah, I thought you were running away. I was gonna come pick you up.
Damn, I just left from this side.
I know how that shit is. But you far out and
Yeah, I'm from Nolan.
oh yeah, damn.
Yeah, they say he ran around with it though.
Yeah, he got that gamble house. I ain't in no slide. I was just gonna goddamn. I'm finna see how I'm finna do this shit though. I'm finna goddamn. I probably need to put paper tag on them motherfuckers.
And just call let me know, man.
Alright.
All right.
Your Honor, the state's going to play 3206.
I can't grow. Hello? Hey, you ain't got no iPhone, like?
Yeah, nah. Why you say that?
Nah, I want to talk on the phone. I was finna tell you something
I'm gonna get peace. I'm gonna get peace up on right quick.
Alright, just like FaceTime, because they can't hear on that FaceTime shit.
I'm gonna FaceTime audio you.
Alright.
So, Your Honor, the 3200 is DeQuellis Boyer, who's Little Quill. He's the brother of DeMarco Boyer, who the state believes is affiliated with Paradise East PDE, an allied gang of YSL, and is the brother of the phone records we discussed in August with Boyer. This is his brother. And so the next call at 3202 is Antonio Sumlin, the gentleman whose tattoos and the gun we were discussing, who was a defendant who pled. And so the first call, Little Quill calls Garlington and says he's with the ops. And he says his girl just pulled off in the car. Peanut just pulled off. I believe he's talking about a female whose nickname is Peanut. And then Garlington's like, well, who's up there with him? And he says he's up there by himself. And he asks him, does he have something on him? And Little Quill says, I don't know. He has jewelry. I believe they're referring to, does he have a gun on him? And then 2 minutes later, he calls Antonio Sumlin, another YSL gang member. And he says, and the person they're discussing is named Johnny, who at the time in March of 22 was having a public Instagram dispute with Garlington. So they had problems with one another. He says that boy Johnny is around the way. Sorry, my problem. Apologies, Madam Court Board. He says that boy Johnny has something on him. How far out are you? And then he says, they say he's riding around with it. And Garlington says, I'm not in a slider. I'm fixing to do this shit, though. Paper tag on this mother effort. So what he's referring to is a slider is a car you can quickly go do a crime in. A paper tag, you can't get caught. And then literally that was at 7:35, Your Honor. At 7:41, he calls back the first gentleman, Little Quill. And he says, do you have an iPhone on you? I got something to tell you, but I can't talk on a phone. FaceTime me because they can't hear. And I believe when he says they, he means the police, law enforcement. They can't hear on that FaceTime shit. Mm-hmm. And then the call ends. And I believe so. The state, for one, you have two of the three murders in this indictment involve these rental cars. And so the fact that he's talking about in a very short span of time, he gets word that this opposition or someone he's beefing with, and then within a couple minutes, he's calling Antonio Sumlin to help him and referencing getting paper tags and a slider. The state feels this is certainly in furtherance of the co-conspirator for what the state feels are apparent reasons. And that's why the state wanted to address these three together, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to admit those over objection. Yeah.
At least, Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay, so the state starts out by saying that this is Lil Quill is what I got, but last name Boyer, who's the brother of DeMarco Boyer, who's not charged in this case, and who no one really even heard of until 60 days ago. The fact that he's DeMarco Boyer's brother, to me, has no relevance. Mr. Atkins provided some context to this that I wasn't unaware of. I wasn't aware of, but apparently, according to the state, Mr. Garlington, as an individual, was having some sort of social media feud with a man named Johnny. One of Mr. Garlington's friends named Boyer, who is not this gentleman, other than being on this wiretap, is not, to my knowledge, not mentioned anywhere in discovery. Calls Garlington, says, "Hey, I see this person that you're having some beef with, I guess." And then Mr. Garlington lays out his plan on what he's going to do to Mr. Sumlin. Again, I don't know it to be Mr. Sumlin. The state's saying it's Mr. Sumlin. I'm not doubting that. But what I just keep going back to, my client is in jail at this time. There's absolutely no indication that Mr. Williams is in contact with Garlington. Mr. Nichols is in jail at this time. I'm really struggling to figure out how I concede common sense. Listening to this call, it appears that Mr. Garlington is planning some sort of crime. I don't know what it is, a robbery or whatever he's planning on some gentleman, some individual he doesn't like. But what this has to do with the group at large, I'm completely lost on. And 401, 403, and then 401 and 403 seem to be major issues that would need to be addressed before these calls are admitted into evidence. And so I don't know. I think I concede. Of course, I don't represent this gentleman, but I concede that Mr. Garlington's involved in some criminality through these calls. But that's not really the issue. But it's going to lead to, my concern is a lot of confusion of issues here. And again, there'll be no one to cross-examine about some of these matters. Even when we get to the hearsay exception, sure, I concede that in certain contexts, asking someone to ride with you or to talk through a plan to get at one of your enemies, personal enemies, would be potentially an 801 D2E situation if the conspiracy that's taking place here on this call was the conspiracy that is charged in this indictment. But it's clearly not. So I just don't see it. And I think it's going to be very confusing to the jury just to hear a conversation of two people who are not going to be testifying about some private animosity against some unknown person named Johnny.
Okay. State want to make any further record?
Your Honor, if the court would like further argument from the state. The state believes that the initial arguments set forth of for one, the first call is letting Garlington know that this person's up here. So it could have been anyone. It's the fact that he gets notified, and what does he do with that information? He immediately calls, essentially immediately, a couple minutes later, Antonio Sumlin, who is, again, someone who was charged in this indictment, pled, has YSL street gang tattoos on his body, and the state believes Garlington and Sumlin are both YSL gang members. And so Sumlin doesn't ask a lot of questions. He's, in that brief wiretap call, it's essentially,
Okay.
So the state feels that this it's actively talking about going to shoot somebody between two YSL gang members together.
Okay. Thank you. All right, my ruling stands. All right, 3501 is our next reference number, I believe.
Yes, Your Honor. And will be PDF page 3534.
Okay, and I see, just so that I let y'all know, we need to circle back on this. I think we all just got a letter from Mr. Arnold's attorney about scheduling, which I have not been able to read, but we need to figure out whatever she's saying about that and sort it out and get her an answer scheduling wise, okay? All right.
Your Honor, did the court want to keep going with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just saw that come over the email, so I want to put it on our radar.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And this call, $35.43, this is referencing, this references what I discussed earlier about the jail, that they put Miles Farley in a room with Quay and Nard. So he says, Nard just called me 2 days ago. And this is in reference to what's going on in the jail. I can play it, but I just wanted to give that backstory context.
Okay. And so what is this going to be? Trying to get him protection, like a conversation about that? Or what?
Yes, Your Honor. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up my notes. Yes, so this 3534 is Garlington speaking with Unfunk, who's Mr. Greer, was a defendant on this case and has pled. And they're discussing, Mr. Greer has spent some time in prison and was affiliated with the Goodfellas, the gang that, when I was discussing the Capo Frank. And so Garlington calls him and Mr. Greer says, hey, call him. And he says the mob in 9 Deuce, talking about the mob is also in reference to Goodfellas in 9 Deuce, which is part and parcel of the Inglewood family. YFN just jumped on Little Miles, and Garlington's like, for real? This is like when they're first learning about it.
Okay.
And then they say, hold on, let me start a 3-way call. And he asked what floor on Rice Street. And then this sets off a cascade of events of trying to get to the bottom of who were these mob members in jail who teamed up with YFN to hurt Miles Farley.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know that I need to hear it. Is there objection to this? And if so, is it the same one voiced or one's voiced about the prior calls about getting protection for Miles and sorting that out?
It is, Your Honor.
Okay. My ruling would be the same then. So this is admissible. So then our next one is 3510, 3543. Okay.
And
this is the same thing?
It is, Your Honor. And so that statement summary that in the center, I'm going through these in terms of, I didn't bracket them by subject matter, so to speak, but this pertains to the same incident where they're trying to get a hold of the individual in the jail to help get to the bottom of what happened.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who's he talking to?
So in 3575, Your Honor, he's talking with So I believe he's talking with Tinquarius Nard Mender, who is incarcerated at the time, is also the individual who was rooming with Marquavius Huey.
So basically, do the next 4 or 5 all have to do with this, or 6?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So they are relevant. However, can you get that story in without using 11 or 12 different
Yes.
wiretaps?
Yes, Your Honor. I will look at all of these and
Okay.
see how to coherently get that through with as
Okay, so
not
take a
all
look
these
at the
calls.
ones, that we already addressed, as well as these next. It looks like at least 6, right? And pick a few, and let's just use those, and not every. We don't need probably every little detail of all of it.
Yes, Your
Okay,
Honor.
all right. So narrow. Okay, so then that would take us to, well, I guess 30.
769, Your Honor.
Looks like it's still the same thing.
So this is a little different.
Okay. What's this one?
So give me 1 second, Your Honor.
Okay.
This, I'm finding my notes, but this is when he's speaking with whose nickname is Bobby Hunt, Khalif Adams, and who was a defendant on this indictment. I'm going to pull up my notes, or transcript, I should say. Yes, Your Honor. It's the call I was thinking of. He's speaking with Khalif Adams, who's in prison, speaking on a contraband phone.
Okay.
And the state's going to play this call for the court.
Yo,
Yo,
what it do, twin?
what's up?
What you got going?
I just woke up.
Your phone ringing. That nigga Newton down there with you. You at Hayes, ain't
Noon just came down
you?
here.
Yeah. He had to come up.
Oh, they just told me. That's what they just told me came down
They
here.
got him on the cell too, though.
Yeah, I probably get my shot.
You get him out there?
He can't come out here with all that fun bunny shit. He fuck up all my
Nah, I
shit.
already told him that. I already told him that. I said, bro, got down.
But that nigga,
He don't be on no bullshit unless it comes to him, though. I was just in the dorm with him, bro. He be chilling. Only reason, like, he gonna go is, like, they was on him on that other shit, like, saying he did that with brain,
no, that's it, man. My shit.
Yeah, they were saying that about Shawty, like, I asked you about the shit, you feel me? Like, no paperwork.
Yeah, you know, niggas in here right now, too.
Huh?
There's so many mob niggas in there doing.
You said so many?
It's something about 8 there. That's saying too much, man.
Yeah, but them niggas as a buck, well, for sure. But yeah, Home got down though, like, yeah, he like, bro, this shit high as fuck now. He told, bro, I need a tablet. He like, man, tell Hunt, man, I got down. He trying to pay for a tablet.
Yeah, I'm finna see. They Puerto Rico come Monday for these tablets. It's tax squad will come Monday for these tablets.
You say you got what?
I said the tax squad supposed to come Monday for the tablet.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, so I'm really gonna see how they work their move money. And I don't know what I can do for his
Yeah. Well, you over the whole, all what the hell you over here, huh?
Huh?
I said, what the hell you over, like, what you over the camp or you over goddamn all this shit?
I'm over certain down a lot of shit.
What you talking about? You be talking, you ain't even talking to poke ass?
I haven't talked to a nigga.
What,
No, I've been talking to twin, man.
20
Yeah, I've been talking to 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I be talking, I stay talking to the clock. I don't be talking,
I'm talking to clock.
say what?
I talked to clock at him up down there, but I also been doing a little bit.
He down there with Lil who?
Huh?
You say he down there with Lil who?
With one of my little brother.
Oh, okay. Man, he saying, oh man, it be back locked up.
How did he get locked up?
One of them nigga had nigga.
Yeah, but I thought he got out from that shit.
Nah, he didn't get out.
But yeah, what I was gonna say, I'm gonna pull up on the nigga. The tilt oil back there at work. He worked back here. The tilt oil live in my dorm. What dorm he said he was in?
I had to DM to say, hold on, let me see. I didn't say he ain't got that. He in G1 106.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pull up on those food in the morning.
Alright, I'm gonna tell that nigga he
said G1 what?
G1 G1 106.
106. Yeah, I'm sending food back there.
Alright,
I'm sending bag of food back there. He needs hygiene too.
Yeah, you know he probably need all of that.
Yeah, I'm sending some of that shit back there.
Alright,
Who that came from, nigga, in G1? Let's fuck all that, nigga.
When he called me, I'm gonna try to call you, see if you up.
Yeah, I'm up now.
Alright.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor, that is the entirety of the call. I'm not sure what specifically defense objection is to this portion.
My objection are similar to the ones that regarding this subject matter of Mr. Farley's in jail and people are messing with him. So those previously stated objections.
So you had, Mr. Atkins said that there was some different subject matter than just that in this call.
So yes, Your Honor. So at the time of this call, I believe he's in Hayes prison and says he's in Hayes, if I'm not mistaken. But Khalif Adams, Garlington's calling Khalif Adams and is describing what I believe is John Quavius Hood, a 30 Deep member. He's coming to prison, and Mr. Khalif Adams is a high-ranking member in prison. And so that's why when Garlington's asking him, what are you over? Like just your cell, your row? And he's like kind of saying, I'm over a lot of stuff, and I can get him a tablet, as in a contraband tablet, what the price is. And so he's trying to get clarity on when John Quavius Hood is getting to the prison that Mr. Adams is at. And so Garlington, and Khalif Adams was indicted on this case as an indicted co-conspirator. And so you have Garlington speaking with him of basically how to facilitate helping someone transition to prison or get items that they need. And so the easy access between prison and someone on the outside, who's Garlington, and helping either friends of YSL gang members or associates have a smooth transition to prison and be set up or squared away, the state believes furthers the conspiracy.
And who is it that they're gonna set up? Who's about to show up at the same prison?
Mr. John Quavius Hood is who the state believes that they're discussing.
So, John Quavius Hood is someone that I'm not familiar with that name from this case. I have heard the name before, but not involving this case, not in this discovery. So, again, and Khalif Adams can, claim that he's running things in prison. I would love to ask him some questions about that because that's a pretty easy claim to make. I don't anticipate that he's going to be testifying. So I won't be able to ask those questions, but I don't understand to the extent that we're going beyond the Miles Farley situation, what Demekion Garlington calling Mr. Adams, who's claiming to run the prison that he's at, to get a tablet for John Quavius Hood, has anything to do with any of this.
Okay, how are you establishing Hood being relevant to this?
So, Your Honor, it's twofold. For one, Mr. Hood's, again, this is from listening with and talking through what is being said with the APD gang detectives. So, with the investigators on this case in terms of what's being said, who are these individuals. And so Mr. Hood is affiliated with 30 Deep, which was what Demekion Garlington used to be.
Okay.
And he's speaking with Khalif Adams, who again was an indicted co-conspirator on this case. And so not only is there some level of, in the case law, in terms of cohesiveness among, someone on the outside with one call speaking to a fellow co-conspirator on the same indictment in prison to help, whether you say that he's doing this for his friend, Mr. Hood, or an allied gang member, that conversation they're having.
All right. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I understand it, but given that this is not even an alleged YSL member, but some affiliated gang, I'm going to exclude that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. What's our next one?
The next one, Your Honor, is going to be PDF page 4082 falls into the same category in terms of there's two sections we wanted to play about discussing the mob and Nine Deuce jumping on Miles Farley. And then there's also a portion that discusses this song that Garlington had. And so let me get my notes and play that portion because it's different than the subject matter of the jail. So I'm going to play, Your Honor, 149 to 250 on PDF page 4082.
I really been like, fuck with that studio? Yeah, I've been fucking around. I really just need to feel like the same shit, really. Like a nigga just hopping on songs and shit. But I got a cover song by myself, but nigga, man, me and Cole got down. we got the little song. Man, these folks fucking with this motherfucker. We ain't dropped it yet, but we really gotta we gotta redo the shit so we can goddamn take the time.
Yo, yo.
I what?
You said who else on it with you?
Lil Cole, my cousin, we just got that.
It's been hard.
And that motherfucker too hard. Them folks, that dog back that motherfucker.
I'm gonna add Doc back that motherfucker. Damn, man.
So, Your Honor, this specific portion this exercise with the wiretap started with specifically exclusively co-conspirator statements, but this really is for a non-hearsay purpose. And there is multiple calls where Garlington is discussing this song he made where there's like two versions. One version, he's like directly referencing and probably dissing Shell Kel. And so he keeps saying, I got to take his name out of it. So this is one of those. The state wasn't going to play or not intend to play multiple of those calls. So this specific portion is for a non-hearsay purpose of the way that Garlington is cognizant of what is in a song that's publicly released and how that can impact law enforcement. Because the general theme, and I don't have on the top of my head the other calls where he mentions this. I have them in my notes, but not readily accessible. He says stuff along the lines of if something happens to him. So he's like, we got to redo the song. We got to take his name out of it so that it's not as overt or clear in case something happens to him. And so that was the purpose of why the state wanted to introduce this. Whether he made the song or not make the song, I do not know. But the fact that he is discussing and aware of, don't say too much, like he wants to make it realistic, but not too realistic because he can get in trouble if something happens to that person.
Okay.
So is this call off the sheet that was sent? Because I'm seeing on the screen it said 4062. On this it says 4082. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
You're correct, Mr. Sharp. It's reference number 4046, PDF page 4082, and there's two time hacks. So the 1 minute and 49 seconds to 2 minutes and 50 seconds was this portion. There's another portion that references what happens in the Fulton County Jail. But I just played the portion that because I wanted to highlight it's not a co-conspirator statement. The state's not alleging it's for a non-hearsay purpose.
Maybe it might be my eyes failing me. I thought when I just looked up at the screen, it said we were playing 4062. Okay, my eyes are failing me. Good to know. So I don't, again, having to change. We're not talking about Mr. Garlington saying, okay, I'm about to go harm, as I understand it, Mr. Watts, or hey, let's plan to go harm Mr. Watts. From my understanding of the call and explanation given by the state, it's I made a song and I need to take out references so if something happens to him, I don't get blamed for it. Not seeing the hearsay link, and certainly I understand that the state or the hearsay exception, and I understand the state saying it's not hearsay, but Mr. Garlington saying I made a song with reference to Kelvin Watts. I don't know how that's not for the truth of the matter asserted. I mean, to make the point the state is trying to make that lyrics need to be changed for it to make any sense to the jurors, they would have to accept the first part of that statement, which is I made a song with Kelvin Watts, references to Kelvin Watts in it. they would have to accept that for the truth of the matter asserted for any of this to make any sense. So I believe it is hearsay, and it doesn't fall under any exceptions.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be objecting also, and maybe I'm wrong, but these conversations have to speak for themselves. It seems like the state would be violating 24-7-704B if they're relying on an investigator to come in and talk about the mens rea or the intent or the meaning of these words. I understand that an expert may be able to talk about a certain phrase or a code word, and that's under Blash, B-L-A-S-H versus State, 318 Georgia, 325. It's in Division 4, 898 Southeast 2D 522, 2024 case. But if what Mr. Atkins is saying is that the investigator, I'm assuming is Investigator Viverito, will be listening to a recording and then explaining to the juries the meaning, I have an objection to all of these. I know I have no standing because Mr. Williams is not on these wiretaps, so I've been relatively quiet, but I will be objecting that the investigator gives some overall closing argument for the prosecution to say this is what's going on. So I didn't want, and you're making rulings, and I wanted you to take that into consideration if you don't mind.
All right. Were you saying that one of the detectives or investigators is going to say, here's what all of this meant?
So, Your Honor, this wiretap and on the state's witness list, this evidence of the wiretap is in Detective Viverito's folder. So
Right.
she is who is going to be, and we have the T3 custodian who is going to, the state intends to lay the foundation for admissibility.
Okay.
But these wiretaps will be introduced through or published when Investigator Viverito is on the stand.
Okay. But is she then going to interpret them?
So, Your Honor, could the state get back to the court in terms of I don't want to misspeak to the court about what, different members of the team prepare different witnesses. So I don't want to, if you can give me a brief moment in terms of I don't know exactly what Investigator Viverito is going to be testifying to. What I was referencing is in terms of who, for example, she's a gang expert who can rely on hearsay in terms of, as any expert can.
Yeah.
Who is Bob Smith? Bob Smith is XYZ, right? I know he's a member of this group because I personally seen him or arrested him or whatever she says. And I know it's different depending on what she's talking about. But in
Right.
terms of, I would like more time to accurately brief the court on this issue that Mr. Steele just brought up. If that's all right with the court.
Okay. But you hadn't already said that. I mean, that's
Said what part, Your Honor?
that your argument for this portion coming in didn't have anything to do with that, right?
Not for him no. And in terms of this specific clip, he doesn't use the word shell cow. So like this short 40-second term, I believe that's what he's referring to because of other wiretaps. But we've obviously reduced the amount of wiretaps we're introducing. And so I believe this one kind of speaks for itself in terms of.
I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yes, Your Honor.
is you're just going to have the jury listen to this, and then you might argue later what it meant or didn't mean. But there's not going to be a witness who gives their rendition of what it meant or didn't mean.
For specifically this taking the name out of the song,
Yes.
I don't believe she was, and that's why I don't want to misspeak because I don't.
Okay.
I will confirm, but the state's intent believes this specific portion of I need to take his name out of the song somewhat speaks for itself, but
All right. So then, Mr. Steele, I'm not sure I'm following your 704 objection.
I don't hear the word shell cow, so I assume that the state's going to have somebody, I assume it's the investigator, Viverito, say what they're talking about. And
Okay.
no witness can get into someone else's mental
Well, that's
state.
what I'm trying to get a handle on, is whether this is going to be some other witness who then says, here's what I think this meant, or whether the state's simply going to let the jury hear it and then later they're going to argue, here's the state's theory on this, because those are definitely two different things.
Yes, Your Honor. And to be clear, I mean, what happens quite frequently, and APD gang detectives and investigator Rito, who is listed as a gang expert, could discuss, is how what's said in songs, whether true or not true, impacts what happens in reality in terms of the cases, the shootings, someone dissing someone and what responds. So if that the jury can combine evidence in the trial to make a determination. I do not believe investigator Rito on this. We play this portion and she says, I'll tell you 100% Garlington's talking about Shell Kel and the song was titled XYZ and there was two versions. That's not what I understand she will be speaking about. I had to, on this specific point, and it might be because Mr. Garlington, was arrested at some point. That's, I don't know exactly what song he's talking about. It's just the fact that he's cognizant of and careful of what he puts in songs.
Okay.
So on that specific part, I wanted to make that part clear, Your Honor. And in terms of, yeah.
So we have this case where the district attorney gets in front of the press and says, Mr. Williams shouldn't have been putting these things in songs.
Okay, well, what the district attorney said in front of the press has not
Well,
come into this trial.
Well,
has it?
they're trying to use lyrics, but then when someone says, well, I should take lyrics out of a song in case something happens, then all of a sudden it's scandalous. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how could Mr. Garlington, if it was relevant to anything, how could him saying, maybe I'll not put this song out here in case, not saying, oh, because we're about to do something to this man, in case something happens to this man, which it's not named, and so I don't want to take that away from Mr. Steele's argument. It is not named who that person is. Somehow that's indicative of guilt too. It's like,
Your Honor, are we allowed to, the court's question specifically regarding the 704 issue? I didn't understand Mr. Shart's response just now to speak directly to it. And I just want to make sure that we're addressing exactly what the court asked us to address just a moment ago. Could the court tell us in the context of what Mr. Shart just said?
I don't think Mr. Shart was addressing the 704. I think he was addressing what his earlier objection was, which is sort of, well, y'all heard it. I'm not going to rephrase it. Well, okay. And then I guess one thing that Mr. Shart did say is, how is this really a non-hearsay purpose? Don't you have to sort of accept a part of it as for the truth?
So, Your Honor, the state, my understanding of this portion in terms of whether it's Garlington discussing removing words in a song. I'm not, he says it like definitively, I had to redo it and take his name out of it. So in my mind, the truth of the matter server would be like Demekion Garlington changed the name and made a new version, but it's the way that he is cognizant of what he's saying and how it could implicate him. And part of, from the state's position and kind of what Mr. Shar was alluding to, is you want to get close to the line, but you don't want to say like, I went to 300 Main Street on May 4th at 2:42 p.m. in a red Corvette and I shot Bob Smith in the head. That's too obvious. You could get, if you actually did that. So you may say, you may allude to it, but you don't want to be so obvious with it that law enforcement says, well, yeah, we have you on camera in that exact same car at that exact same time. So it's a little bit of a gamesmanship in terms of publicly discredit someone else so that they know what you're talking about, but there's some plausible deniability if something happens to them where it's just a reference or a allusion to it. So, yes, Your Honor, you may.
Really just got down. I really been like point them. Point.
Fuck with that studio.
Yeah, I've been fucking around. I really just need to. I feel like the same shit, really. Like a nigga just hopping on songs and shit. I got a cover song by myself, but nigga, man, we got me and Cole got down. We got the little song. Man, these folks fucking with this motherfucker. We ain't dropped it yet, but we really gotta we gotta redo the shit so we can goddamn take.
You know who? You know who?
I what?
You said who else on it with you?
Lil Cole, my cousin, they got that.
That been hard.
That motherfucker too hard. Them folks, look, that dog back that motherfucker.
I'm gonna add Doc back that motherfucker. Damn, man. I'm ready. You gotta get on this. I got so much shit.
You do?
Is that it? That's the whole thing? All right, I'm gonna admit that.
And so, Your Honor, the next call is reference number 4635, PDF page 4672. And this is Garlington speaking with Mr. Copeland.
Hello. Yeah,
Fine.
nigga, I can hardly hear you. What you?
I mean, I was just gonna ask, is the summary of it, that's essentially what it says?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the purpose of it would be
So,
consciousness of guilt, what?
So it's a number of things. One, Mr. Copeland is telling Garlington, you better be careful on social media because I just talked to, I believe he's talking about Mr. Sledge, said there's a 43-man RICO indictment. This jail call, or not jail call, this wiretap call is April 23rd of 2022. So the indictment was May of 2022. And there's another call we haven't gotten to yet on Antonio Sumlin's where he's basically saying this why Copeland is in jail, in prison, gang task force, there's some issues in jail, and they're coming at him. And so someone says, I also talked to Copeland, and he says, basically, this YSL stuff is hot, and you better fall back. It's actually another male calling someone, referencing the conversation. And so, to me, this is a co-conspirator statement in furtherance of the conspiracy against Copeland and Garlington by warning him that, hey, they don't know if it's true or not.
Right.
The timing and what they're discussing is pretty close to when this indictment came out. It wasn't 43, but it was 28. But nonetheless, it's him warning him, hey, be careful. That's what Sledge just told me.
Okay. Any objection to this evidentially?
Your Honor, relevance, again, we're talking about two individuals that are not sitting here at trial, and I don't believe that they purport to be speaking on behalf of anyone here at trial, and any motivation they would have would be self-preservation. So I believe it's hearsay, but leave it with the court.
Okay, well, it is hearsay, but I think this comes in under the co-conspirator exception, admitted.
We only have one more from Mr. Garlington's wiretap, which is reference number 4959, PDF page 5000. And we believe this, Mr. Garlington is speaking with the same Mr. Wright we had discussed earlier. And we're going to start at 28 seconds and play to 1 minute and 41 seconds.
Okay, well, is it accurately summarized? Is that the gist of what I need to know?
Yes, Your Honor. This is the call I had referenced earlier when we were discussing drug sales.
Okay. Is there an objection?
Yes. This is exactly what I was talking about. Garlington is selling drugs on his own to fill his own pockets and has nothing to do with my client. Garlington claims that my client, who at the time of this call is in jail, mind you, so it's nothing that's happening as they're speaking.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, it seems to me that we've got plenty of evidence here that lots of people in jail have access to phones and social media and what have you.
Point
So
well
that may or
taken.
may not.
Point
Okay.
well taken. All right, so, but he is just basically almost jealously or saying, boy, I wish I could sell drugs on the internet as well as Shannon used to, or as far as I've seen Shannon
At
do.
some unknown time period.
Yeah,
they
right.
have.
And
Okay.
and so, you know, I'm not acknowledging that Shannon was selling drugs in 2022 on the internet, but even if he was, that has nothing to do with what Garlington has going. This is actually proof that Garlington and Shannon aren't some unified drug dealing organization. And so Garlington's just saying, yeah, I don't know how Shannon does it, and I wish I could do it, and this is what I would do. I mean, it's hearsay. It's not in furtherance of any conspiracy. It's bad character evidence, and it's irrelevant.
Your Honor, I think this kind of falls into also the category of a declaration against interest in terms of their discussing amongst each other their drug sales, how to sell more Percocets, and he's like, you should try putting it on Instagram. And so in terms of getting through a hearsay objection, the state feels the most applicable exception to what they're talking about, which is selling Percocet pills, is there's some indicia of reliability because they're making statements that, you know, if it was that Mr. Wright and Mr. Garlington is against their interest to be discussing. And so in terms of if they're being, so that's the state's primary argument is, you know, discussing how to better sell narcotics and talking about their own narcotics and essentially dealing and how to boost sales, basically.
The thing
Well,
about
I suspect that Mr. Sharp's problem with it is not the two of them discussing it. It's the mention of Mr. Stillwell and his alleged methods for selling illicit drugs.
correct.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so
The state, so his objection is a bad character or?
well, I mean, it's
Well, the
certainly-
declaration, and we litigated this on a different matter, but the state tried to argue declaration against penal interest. The thing about declaration against penal interest is you're allowed to declare things against your own penal interest. What you're not allowed to do is declare things against other people's penal interest.
well, that
and-
doesn't get it in.
Right. And so that's my issue.
So it's essentially, yeah, just the kind of gratuitous mention of what Mr. Stillwell might be doing. Like, where's the foundation for
So, Your Honor,
why, or not the foundation, but the exception that lets that part
in terms of it being bad character,
and hearsay?
so the state feels that Garlington making that statement, I guess, and I could be wrong, my mind, him discussing how Mr. Shard's client is successfully selling Percocets on Instagram and how Mr. Wright needs to try that strategy is wrapped up in my mind in the same, he's making that statement about their own drug dealing. And so I view it, and the court may view it differently, but I view it in that bucket of a statement against interest. It's part and parcel of that.
Let me listen to it.
Oh, this man got out from the corner right there. They had run the service somebody. They probably be back already.
He probably, I thought he said he was on Boulevard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put them. You don't want to put them perks on your page, bro.
But what perk?
The perks I got.
You want to post? I post. I don't give a damn.
Nah, I know you know.
I don't never. My shit never sell for Instagram, bro.
For real.
Bro, I always post personal shit. My shit never sell for Instagram. That's why I don't read them doing that type of shit.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, my shit never sell for Instagram. I was like, what the
Nah,
fuck?
I seen that nigga. If you doing that shit, bro, that's what he was getting hit.
Yeah, nah, he was doing that shit. Some folks will be, they'll be hit when the motherfuckers gone and shit. Like,
Yeah.
man, the motherfuckers gone.
Yeah. So
You
got
just get the
Uh-huh.
billionaire hoes and get the, like, riding by where you be at and shit, you for the motherfucker.
Yeah.
I post no. Somebody might fight. Goddamn.
Damn, man, I don't pick it.
Your Honor, upon further consideration, the state cannot play this.
Okay.
I'm thinking through what Mr. Shard said and my thoughts, and so.
All right. Okay, so that's the end of the Garlington wiretap, I believe. Who's the second wiretap?
It's, Your Honor, it's Antonio Sumlin. He's in a little different category because he's someone the state intends on calling at trial.
Okay.
So, I mean,
So do we need to address this right now, or?
I don't believe we do, Your Honor, because a lot of his call, I mean, there is some that I believe are co-conspirator statements, but he's also a testifying witness. So some of these are going to be more an impeachment.
Okay. All right.
Up to the court, Your Honor.
Well, I mean, obviously, some of these say, and a lot of these say entire call, and I don't know exactly the length or substance of what an entire call is, but it seems like if it's to impeach, then depends what he's saying, and maybe I do need to know beforehand what's on there to know whether it's actually impeachment or not.
Yes, Your Honor. And I guess I should be, so the state believes that these 9 that we included, if Mr. Sumlin was not testifying, the state's position is they are co-conspirator statements. I just wanted to highlight that, unlike Mr. Garlington, we are expecting him to be called.
Okay.
So we have 9 highlighted, so we can turn to Mr. Sumlin's if the court wants, Your Honor.
Okay. Let me cross out the ones that y'all aren't intended to use for any purpose anymore. Okay, okay. So of the 9 that the state might end up using, so let me ask the state. So you expect to question Mr. Sumlin and have him essentially testify as to the substance or whatever it is that you wanted, you just expect to get it in through his testimony, and only if he doesn't testify as expected would you then turn to these, or what?
We would be asking him about what is in those calls.
Okay.
I think it might be helpful to litigate them, but then it would just be impeachment. I don't know whether there are any particular objections to the subject of these calls. So it can't hurt to.
I guess maybe we'll find that out first. So these 9 calls that might potentially get offered, is there going to be objection to any of these? To the substance within them, or?
So, as I understand what we're saying, is it's kind of like the Quindarius Zachary prior statements where the state's not going to seek to admit these, but just as impeachment, and we just want to know if the subject matters are should be off limits in our view. Is that?
So I think so. I guess if they end up being offered, is there going to be some, assuming they would be properly offered for impeachment, is there some other objection?
And Your Honor, I'll also say, just to make it clean, we should probably proceed as if we're going to offer them, because even if the witness is testifying, they are still admissible co-conspirator statements. So rather than mix those 2 together, we'll treat them like we're just going to offer these 9.
Okay. All right. Let's take a quick restroom break, and then we'll come back. Let's take 10 minutes, come back at 3 and tackle these. Bless you. Bless you. I'm sorry it's so cold in here. I'm trying to get it adjusted, but I think they just got sick of the message that they needed to turn it down more, and they got really extreme with it. For everybody, no, Mr. Williams. Okay, well, while we're waiting for Mr. Williams, there she is. Can y'all approach for a minute?